And I was exposed to the sort of work that is general that we do, working with businesses, with nonprofits, with the state and local governments in the state of Arkansas. And so, once I got exposed to that, I knew that was more what I wanted to do than, pick narrow field economics and concentrate the next 30 years or something of my life towards that particular field.
Welcome to the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast, where our vision is to inspire busy professionals, especially first and second generation immigrants and Americans, to explore the state of the American dream in 2022 and beyond. That is the Trinity of Freedom: time, financial, and geography freedom. I'm your host, Missy Liu, and I have achieved financial independence, and I'm helping many others to do the same. I started out with $5,000 and have really built wealth for my family along the process. Now I'm on a mission to help hundreds of thousands of people like me to do the same.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast. I'm your host, Missy Liu, and today we have an awesome guest here with us today, Mervin Jebaraj. I met him at a Northwest Arkansas Business Analysis meeting, and he was a keynote speaker, and the host of the event. He's actually a lot more than that. He's also a first-generation immigrant and the director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Arkansas. So he is a pretty big name in our area in Northwest Arkansas. He also has contributed heavily to the economic thinking and public policy discussions that journalists, business people, and community leaders alike rely on to understand how national and regional issues impact our area in Northwest Arkansas as a whole. He also has been recognized as for the under 40 list by the Arkansas Business and the Northwest Arkansas Business Journal as well. He is also on the Arkansas 250 list as well. So a lot of lists that you can see. He also makes presentations annually that shares the center's expertise to over 5,000 individuals, talking about his economic analysis and commentary through TVs, radios, and print media as well. He also serves on quite a few places, such as the Community Development Advisory Council of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, and the Board of Directors of the National Association for Business Economics, Board of Directors of the Northwest Arkansas National Airport, and on the board of the Walton Arts Center as well. So he's a quite well-connected individual, as you can see. So Mervin, I know you've got a lot of titles and a lot of names, and you come from humble beginnings from what I read about you from the journals and different places. Before we dive into kind of your professional background, walk us through your humble beginnings and how you got here.
Yeah, I grew up in Dubai, which is, I think most people know Dubai these days, in the United Arab Emirates. I was born there and I grew up there. My parents are from South India, Chennai, and they moved to Dubai, a while before I was born. And so they were immigrants to Dubai, and I was born there, went to high school there, and then went to school here at the University of Arkansas. So I spent, a little less than at this point, half my life in Dubai, and then the other half here in Northwest Arkansas.
Okay. It's very interesting because I am in a few years coming to be about half as well in China and in the US.
I was about to say half and half, and then I realized I've gotten older. So
yeah, time flies, but sure. Yeah, that's awesome. And, you picked economics to be your expertise, and that's definitely important to understand from an investing standpoint, from just anything you do. Economics impacts so many things. So when you came to the US, what did you think of economics and how that fit into the pursuit of freedom? Was that important to you at all?
So, when I first came to the United States to go to college, my undergraduate major was international relations. And so I was thinking more along the lines of pursuing a field where I thought I would get to travel a lot. So I like traveling. And so I went into international relations thinking, I could go into some type of nonprofit work that is globally oriented or diplomatic service or something of that nature. So that was my original thinking. And, part of being in a liberal arts school, getting a liberal arts degree, is that you're exposed to a lot of different subjects. It was a requirement for your degree, and one of those subjects was economics. And I took the 2 required economics classes and realized that I actually liked the subject a lot, for the way it analyzes different issues that matter. So it wasn't like completely a departure from dealing with, international issues. It's just a different lens for seeing them. And so I realized I liked economics a lot, so I ended up getting a degree in economics and international relations, and then continued to getting my advanced degree as well, taking more economics courses. So I didn't mean to study economics when I don't know that I had planned this path at all. It's just something that happened in a series of good fortune let me get to where I am today. So
That's awesome. Pursuing something you're passionate about and that lead to great success. That's definitely a good recipe for success. Something I want to encourage my younger brother and sister in as well as they look at career options and things like that. And it's very interesting to me that you picked economics, and but you didn't just become an economics professor. You went out in establishing yourself regionally and nationally as well, with connect yourself closely with the business in the area, the community in the area. How were you able to establish that, and was that your vision the whole time?
I did briefly think I wanted to be an economics professor, but the more sort of I thought about that, I realized, the field that I'm in economics, I'm more of a generalist. I do a wide variety of work in the different fields. And as you mentioned, we provide economic analysis, policy analysis for people across the state of Arkansas. And so the traditional academic path has been to specialize in a field in economics or a particular subject area in economics, and then you publish and you work on that particular subject area. And, right as soon as I graduated with my undergraduate degree in economics, I had the opportunity to work at the center that I now direct. And I was exposed to the sort of work that is general that we do, working with businesses, with nonprofits, with the state and local governments in the state of Arkansas. And so, once I got exposed to that, I knew that was more what I wanted to do than, pick narrow field economics and concentrate the next 30 years or something of my life towards that particular field. It didn't interest me nearly as much as the kind of work and topics changing in the line of work that I'm in right now. I'm not concentrating in one particular field.
I see. And when you look back at this accidental field that you took a few classes and got into but established yourself in, how do you see that connect yourself to the freedom? Like talking about the topic of time, financial, economic freedom, and geography freedom. What are your thoughts on those?
Well, I think in the sense that the degree in economics, there people sort of have a narrow view of the subject. Maybe there's too much mathematics, and maybe there is too much mathematics. There certainly was a lot of mathematics when I took it. Or, whether or not it's again, the academic version of economics is very highly specific, and it tends to be economists talking to other economists and not really speaking to the public. But I think that's changed over the last couple of decades. There's been a financial crisis and all the stuff that's going on now. And there's been a lot more demand for economics to open up its field and explain, what's going on in the world, as opposed to just writing academic papers and talking to each other. So I think economics is, in general, the skill set that you acquire with economics is very marketable. You don't have to work in the field of economics at all. You could work in a variety of different fields for a variety of different corporations. So that it gives you sort of freedom to move around from job to job, work in different industries. You don't have to work for think tanks or policy places or centers like mine. You can work for corporations, help them, use the same economic tools to help them understand the data that they have, or, understand their business, or understand their customers. And you see, major corporations, both here and around the country, hiring teams of economists to analyze their customer data, to analyze their business data, to make better decisions. So everybody talks about big data, which is wonderful to have a lot of big data, but, understanding how to use that data, how to clean that data, how to use that data, and how to analyze that data and, get meaningful insights from it is really important. So in the sense that you could, with this degree, do a lot of different things with it. Not something that was at the forefront of my mind when I started taking economics classes. I just thought it was interesting. But that's certainly true today. And, so in the sense that you can live and work anywhere with this degree
Hmm.
in a variety of fields is, and after the fact, important to me. It was not what I was thinking about when I got into it.
Yeah, that's good, and this is a good segue to kind of the data-driven aspect of the economics and some of the report that you published, or just thoughts and perspectives you shared. I also have a data analytics background, like I mentioned to you, so I really enjoyed it when you pull up the charts and the data and really make it more of a data-driven analysis on what's happening in the economy. And the economy has so many levels as well: regional economy, business cycles within different areas as well. So when someone asks you, for example, what is going on in the commercial real estate space in Northwest Arkansas, what questions like that? What are your thought process as an economist in answering that question in a more methodological way as a professor? So,
Yeah. Um, so I think the big difference in what we do at our center is we concentrate on what's going on in the state of Arkansas. And, I think if you think about any particular market sector, commercial real estate, residential, whatever it is, there's always a lot of data at the national level. And as you get down to the state and local level, that data gets sparser and sparser. And so you're sort of having to make decisions at the local level based on national trends. And what we specialize in doing is providing that level of analysis for the state of Arkansas and here where we are in Northwest Arkansas. And through a partnership with Arvis Bank, we've had a real estate study ongoing since 2004. And so we very closely watch the residential real estate and commercial real estate markets in this two-county area in Benton and Washington County. And so to me, understanding, the key difference between commercial real estate markets and, if you looked at just a national trend that is dominated by commercial real estate markets in big cities. So if you go to big cities, office spaces are very empty. The old cities were built along the style of building a commercial core with a lot of office spaces and not a lot of mixed use around it. So what you see is tall office buildings, some places that serve lunch. And then, if you visit that city and you live in the commercial core when you visit, you'll find a lot of people during the day. And then you come back to your hotel in the evening and the place is, a dead zone. What's happened, obviously, as a result of the pandemic and change in behavior is that people are working from the office less often than they used to. And places that were built like that have far fewer people coming in every single day. In some cases, they're working remotely entirely. In some cases, they're coming in 2 or 3 days a week. The businesses that are in those areas are struggling to, make it. I've seen a study, I think, that Bloomberg did in New York City, and the average New York office worker is spending $5,000 less on incidentals related to coming to work, going out to lunch with your coworkers or clients, or going out to drinks or dinner after work. So, if you're looking at the national trends and looking at what's happening in big cities in the commercial real estate market, whether it's office space or retail space, in those commercial cores, you'll see a high vacancy rate and things of that nature. And that's very different. So if you were depending on that data, your decision making here in Northwest Arkansas would be to pull back investments in commercial real estate. But what we've seen in Northwest Arkansas is that, people are continuing to invest here. People are building new commercial space. We've seen a lot of office development in Northwest Arkansas. We've seen a lot of retail development in Northwest Arkansas, and that the vacancy rates in general over the past few years, in spite of the pandemic, have been going down. So people are moving, their workers to nicer offices. They're taking up new office buildings that are nicer. So even though there is still hybrid work and remote work here in Northwest Arkansas, they're still moving to nicer office spaces than they were, and they're using more space. So as fewer people are coming in every single day, they have more space available to them. And so if you look at national trends, you'd see commercial real estate not doing well in Northwest Arkansas. It is doing well. It's doing better than the other commercial real estate market in central Arkansas, which again has some issues that bigger cities have had, which is commercial core of their towns that are largely not working so well. And because we never developed that, we still don't have a big city per se. Our areas tend to be a lot more mixed use, and we're not entirely dependent on just offices to make a particular part of our city work from a commercial real estate perspective. So there's, whether or not people are going to offices, there's still people utilizing retail and other businesses around office buildings.
This podcast is sponsored by Life Mission Capital, founded by me, Missy Liu, where my life mission is to help busy professionals invest well so they can focus on what matters. All my life, I was taught to study and work hard for my freedom. Until one day, I realized that unless I let my money work hard for me, I will always be trading my most precious resource, time, for freedom. Since then, we have also been helping our investors passively diversify into more than 1,000 units of recession and inflation-resistant alternative investments, such as multifamily, mobile home parks, short-term rentals, and more. Learn more with our free ebooks at lifemissioncapital.com.
Yeah, definitely. What you just touched on is looking at a national level, what's happening can be good background data, but it's important to look at locally when you're looking at real estate or economic factors, especially with Northwest Arkansas sometimes can be a little bit of an outlier in some of this economics data. So it's always easy to look backwards and say, hey, this happened, our vacancy now is this. What are the data points what you try to look at to look forward to help us see what's going to happen the next 1, 3, 5, whatever amount of years that I feel confident in predicting?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing, at least here in the Northwest Arkansas market that we study a lot more closely, is, obviously we look at vacancy rates twice a year, so it is looking backward. But, because we have to survey so many people in the commercial real estate market, we're able to continue getting data on a monthly basis just because it takes a long time. So even though we just release it twice a year, we're constantly talking to people in commercial real estate to get a real-time understanding. So even before something is published, we might get indications of whether something is slowing or not, or accelerating. The other thing that we look at is permit data as well. So, if you develop new commercial properties, you have to get new commercial building permits and things of that nature. And we track the amount of permits that are being issued in Northwest Arkansas. Not every permit means that a project will be completed. It gives you an idea as to the level of investment that, and permits usually have a dollar value attached to them that kind of estimates the amount of that investment. So, we track those particular things to try to figure out what is happening in this market. And the sort of growth that we've seen in our commercial real estate market tends to be around things that obviously we're building offices, but that's because people are opening new offices for companies that might be somewhere else here in Northwest Arkansas to be close to some of the things happening here. And a lot of the retail, real estate development is coming from just providing services to people moving to Northwest Arkansas. So as long as our economy continues to do well, as long as people continue moving to Northwest Arkansas, we'll still need, dentists and dental hygienists and nail salons and hair salons and those types of restaurants and bars and those types of businesses. And that's where we're seeing the commercial real estate development.
Yeah, definitely. What you just mentioned is that people is really the big driver for real estate, where people are that really heavily impacts real estate. And you talked about looking at permits to see future supply, and the demand piece depends on the future population growth. So in your perspective, what are the key indicators or factors you look at to more quantitatively predict population growth? Because I see all sorts of reports talking about, I just take an example of Northwest Arkansas, right now we're, I think 700,000 population. I'll have some numbers like 2 million population by this year. And while I trust their research, but meanwhile, I haven't did analytics background, I'd like to understand, like, how are they really deriving those numbers? I know your solution or numbers are different, but just curious, what are the things you guys look at to do that?
Yeah, there's, it's not ideal, and population growth projections are, especially the ones that are further out, tend to just, I don't know that I necessarily, obviously you need to do these population projections. There's a lot of federal grants and transportation planning and all these different things that sort of depend on a 30-year time horizon. I don't know anybody that can actually predict anything in out 30 years. I don't know anybody that can actually accurately predict things out 10 years. I think 5 years is hard enough to do. 1 to 2 years is a lot better to work on. So you can much more easily predict population growth or something in a year or 2 years. 5 is a little bit harder, 10 even harder, 30 you're just mathematically there's a way to do it. It's statistically sound, but it is just looking at past growth rates that have happened over the past several decades, and then looking at the growth rate over those decades and then projecting that out generally over the next 30 years. So, Northwest Arkansas in the past decade or so, on average, has grown between 2 and 2.5% each year. And so if you keep projecting, we're currently about 560,000 or so in population. So if you keep projecting that out, by 2045, we'll have about 1 million people in Northwest Arkansas. That obviously assumes that we're growing 2.5% from here
per
on
year.
out. It could grow faster, it could grow slower. There's no reason to believe that 2.5 is what we're always going to grow. But, I can tell you that we'll probably grow 2.5 next year. But,
Yeah.
10 years from now, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, 2.5% is a very good number from a metropolitan growth area standpoint, and consistently for the past decade, probably we've been growing at a pace. So, yeah, thank you for shining lights on kind of some of the methodology, even though it sounds simple, but sometimes the simple things has a lot of high accuracies. The past data in this case can predict a lot of things about the future. I know we don't have all the time to dive into the economics area, but economics is an area as a real estate investor or anyone who wants to pursue time, financial, geography freedom, I think they should have a good understanding of. So in your experience, for people who are, when they hear about economics, they're like having headaches. What are the best ways for people to become more fluent in the economics area? And from your experience, what your students' experiences?
Obviously, my number one suggestion is to enroll at a university and take some economics classes. I mean, I do still work at a university, even though I don't actively teach a lot of classes. But I think there are, like I mentioned earlier, I think in the past couple of decade and a half or so, I think there are people in the economics profession that understand that it's important to be able to communicate. What good is having all this knowledge and having this tool set to analyze the state of the world and not be able to share that with people that don't have training in economics? And so I think you've seen a lot more writers in economics that speak to a general audience and have spent a lot of time. And so, I think the greatest indicator of this is that if you turn on your TV news channels. Previously, TV news channels talked to political reporters most of the time, and you're starting to see more economists being interviewed. And that's a two-sided relationship. Economists have gotten better at explaining complex topics to a general audience. And there's been a lot more, and because they're able to explain complex topics to a general audience, there's a lot more demand to hear them or hear the perspectives from economists on different topics. So, and there's certainly several people that, write about day-to-day things. I don't know where they find the time to do all this, but they write about, ongoing current issues from an economics lens. And you can find several of them online, find the flavor that you like or the style that you like to read. And, you should be able to find at least some economist perspective on some broader issues in the world, whether it's, bank failures like we've seen recently or the war between Russia and Ukraine and how that impacts all of us.
So you suggest that sometimes rather than just, obviously it'd be nice to enroll in a class. Not everyone has the luxury of time, sometimes finances to do it. So in the topic of finding hot topics and kind of study the relationships of different variables in the economy and see how they interact with each other can kind of give you a basic understanding of things. Are there any particular economists that you think could be good for people who are beginners to follow, or you think is interesting to follow? You could say yourself too.
Yeah, I would say that you could follow me on Twitter, but
Okay,
I
on Twitter.
used to be pretty good at posting stuff, but I find myself busy sometimes. I just let it go and don't post for a while. But usually, I'm reluctant to just name a few people or something because you're never going to agree with everybody and their, viewpoint or lens of seeing the world. But there are certainly people. There's a Twitter user named No Opinion.
No opinion.
Yeah,
Noah,
his name is
like
Noah Smith, and so I guess his Twitter handle is No Opinion. That's spelled Noah Opinion.
okay,
But
NOAH opinion.
yes, and he tends to write a lot. And the problem with writing a lot is that you might also get it wrong a lot because if you have to produce content every single day, you can't spend a lot of time thinking about the issues. So there's certainly some amount of that. Previously, I would have said an economist like Austin Goolsbee, who was at the University of Chicago and, worked in the public sector for a very long time and had a very active Twitter presence, but he's now the president of the Chicago Fed. So I don't think he tweets nearly as much as he used to because he's not allowed to. So
Yeah.
So, there's certainly economics is a topic you can follow on Twitter, so you'll get diverse viewpoints that you can.
Hmm. I see. So find someone that fits your flavor, whether it's no opinion or someone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last question is, for people who want to be a little bit more like you, to find an area of expertise and just really make a name out of themselves in a particular area, what are your suggestions for the success that you're having?
For the field of economics, or
Economics or in general, because you didn't, like you said, you're not just a professor. You went beyond to establish a name for yourself in the area, in a in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas as well. What are your suggestions for people who want to, what inspirations should people take from you that went above and beyond in this?
I'm always extremely reluctant to sort of suggest a path for people to take. I always find that, the path that I've taken, I've ended up where I am, a series of, fortunate events that happened in my lifetime. And I feel a little bit like the guy that won the lottery at the end of playing it a lot. At my feet are all the lottery tickets I didn't win. So I can't give you advice to say this is the path you can take, because it was strewn with misfortune along the way. But I've been, like I said, I didn't intend to study this topic. I studied this topic. The first job I got was at the center that I'm working in, and got me into the field that I'm in. So certainly I've been very lucky in that sense to sort of get into this, and the subject matter interested me, and so therefore made it easier for me to get good at doing it. And so if there's the cliche, follow something you're passionate about, certainly it is a lot easier to get better at a subject or area that you care about, as opposed to just having to do something because of the paycheck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And don't get me wrong, I'm still doing this because it's a paycheck, but
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's nice when you work on something you love, it pays at the same time. And you like it, you feel good about doing it, do more of it, become an expert, and everything else becomes easier from there. So there's definitely truth on that. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's it at the end of the show. I know you're active on LinkedIn, and you said that you're also active on Twitter as well. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to connect or follow you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the easiest, than trying to tell them my email address over the thing. But it's at Mervin Jebaraj on Twitter, and same name on LinkedIn.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mervin, for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your story with us and your perspectives.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Mervin.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast with me, Missy Liu. We hope you enjoy the tips and tricks that others have used to build their American dream and their trinity of freedom. We would love for you to subscribe and leave a rating and a review. You can also find all the episodes and details on lifemissioncapital.com. Until then, let your life mission go wild.